I've said this before, but when you create a monster, you better be ready for the day it turns around and bites you right in the face. That's exactly what's happening to Donald Trump right now. For years, he fed his supporters a steady diet of conspiracy theories, election lies, and deep state fantasies. He taught them not to trust facts, not to trust institutions, not to trust even their own eyes if the truth didn't feel good enough. It worked brilliantly for him until it didn't. Think about it. In July 2024, at a rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, a bullet grazed his ear. Trump stood up, fist in the air, blood on his face, and shouted, "Fight! Fight!" That moment became sacred to millions of his followers, proof that God himself had saved him. Then, just yesterday, another apparent assassination attempt, this time at the White House Correspondents Dinner, one of the most secure events in Washington, with the president, vice president, and half the cabinet sitting in that ballroom. And now, some of the very same voices who once framed Butler as divine intervention are publicly expressing skepticism and demanding clearer answers. Marjorie Taylor Greene and others deep inside Maga are openly wondering if something doesn't add up. The distrust Trump helped normalize is no longer focused only outward. It is increasingly reshaping how even his own supporters interpret dramatic political events. Let me show you how we got here and why this should matter to every American who still cares about truth. If this is already making you think, drop your honest thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you know others who've been wrestling with these same questions, share this with them. Sometimes the clearest conversations happen when good people talk honestly together. Before we talk about the conspiracy theories swirling around yesterday's incident, let's first go back to where this whole phenomenon really began. Butler, Pennsylvania, July 2024. And actually, I want to say something important before we go further. What I find truly fascinating and a little tragic is that Trump has so damaged trust in government and institutions that people now find it much easier to believe wild theories. He has shown he will lie about almost anything and cover up what he doesn't like. So I completely understand why so many are skeptical. He literally created an environment where facts can be ignored if they don't fit the story he wants to tell. That approach helped him enormously, but it has rippled far beyond his movement. Now, even his own supporters are applying that same distrust to him. You understand? Okay, let's look at what happened. That day in Butler, a young man named Thomas Matthew Crooks fired shots at Trump. One grazed his ear. Trump survived. Corey Compertore tragically died. In the days that followed, the moment became legendary. The fist pump, the blood, the fight, fight, fight. Many called it divine intervention. But over time, public debate expanded beyond the event itself and into broader questions about transparency, communication, and political narrative. Even on CNN, the conversation became very revealing. Let me play you this clip.
Trump started his campaign, as you mentioned, Abby, with the 5.5-year lie about Barack Obama's birth certificate. He's been fueling campaign conspiracy theories for years. And the other issue is that he hasn't been transparent. I'm not going to get into the...
About Butler?
Yes. I'm not going to get into the conspiracy about Butler, but the fact that he never released his medical records about Butler, and he claimed that his...
Well, you are getting into it.
That sounds pretty conspiratorial.
I'm saying...
the redistricting.
I'm not saying it's true. I'm saying the failure to talk about it honestly and provide transparent information.
But you do believe that it actually occurred, though, right? Like this guy is saying
I have no reason to disbelieve it, but I'm telling you, the fact that he hasn't been transparent about this hasn't helped his case.
Are you being
this is so crazy, though, Keith.
You are intentionally making things vague so people will say, oh, listen to that guy. Whoa.
Well, no. I'm going to
clarify, Keith,
I'm going to go down the rabbit hole.
Please clarify,
you can make an issue. All right, here's the thing. The one thing I think, everybody's looking at me weird, I know.
This is Butler, Pennsylvania?
This is Butler, Pennsylvania.
Oh, no, careful, man.
I'm not trying to get in trouble, but just the one thing that I think is very odd is the whole thing about the ear. And the fact that he claimed that his ear was not nicked off, and everybody was wearing the Band-Aids at the Republican convention, and then it was healed a few weeks later. There's never been an explanation for that. I'm not saying that there's any, I'm not saying there's any truth to it. I'm just saying the lack of transparency. I don't know, but the Trump administration loves to exaggerate things. I'm sure that surely there was.
I mean, Keith, it's like you're friends with this comedian guy.
No, I'm not.
I mean, because this guy's amplifying nonsense, man. This is crazy.
Isn't it weird that let me play.
This is bizarre.
But sure, Michael, it might be.
I mean, I can't believe we're even taking this serious.
Look,
I can't believe Trump had people wearing bandages on their ears at the Republican convention.
Hold on. What's extraordinary, I think, about this moment is that Trump has primed his base to be very receptive to conspiracy theories. So some of the people who amped up Trump for years, like Tucker Carlson, when they now start saying things like this, it's not surprising that the base then picks it up, hook, line, and sinker.
You heard that, right? They're sitting on live television openly discussing the speed at which the ear healed, the lack of medical records, and how Trump's own history of conspiracy theories has now come back to haunt him. One host even says Trump has primed his base to be very receptive to conspiracy theories. And that's exactly what we're seeing now. Marjorie Taylor Greene, one of Trump's strongest allies, started sharing long posts from longtime Trump supporters questioning the official story. A former national delegate who worked hard to get Trump nominated wrote that Trump's statement, "This will be the only time I talk about it," felt completely out of character for a man who loves talking about himself. Why say that and then keep bringing it up? Why no full medical report? Why did that iconic image become such a powerful political symbol so quickly? And why do emotionally charged visuals often intensify public skepticism? These aren't random liberals asking. These reactions reflect how deeply distrust-based political messaging can shape public expectations. When transparency feels incomplete, suspicion often grows regardless of who is involved. This is the monster turning on its creator. The man who spent a decade telling his followers, don't trust what you see, don't trust official stories, question everything, is now watching his own supporters question the two biggest dramatic moments of his political life. And now we turn to yesterday's events at the White House Correspondents Dinner. A massive ballroom, more than 1,000 people deep underground, the sitting president, vice president, the entire cabinet, and dozens of senior lawmakers all gathered in what was supposed to be one of the most secure venues in Washington, D.C. Then shots rang out just outside the room. Chaos erupted, people diving under tables, Secret Service agents rushing in with guns drawn, no cell service in that deep bunker-like space, minutes of raw fear as VIPs were evacuated. This wasn't a random outdoor rally. This was the White House Correspondents Dinner, an event Donald Trump has spent years calling fake news central and enemy of the people, and yet it happened right there. Rightfully, people are asking questions. If this was a high-level official event with the President of the United States in attendance, with pre-approved guest lists, verified journalists, and hundreds of elite Secret Service agents surrounding the entire complex, how did someone still manage to get close enough to fire shots and trigger total panic? How did one individual apparently bypass multiple layers of elite protection surrounded by armed agents? That is not just my question. It's a question a lot of Americans, including many inside Maga, are asking right now. And the skepticism runs even deeper. Marjorie Taylor Greene herself addressed the shooting directly, writing, "The president is using his war on Iran and last night's White House Correspondents' Dinner shooting as excuses to give up your rights so that Congress just passes a clean extension of FISA 702%. It's ridiculous and absurd that any president who has sworn an oath to uphold the Constitution would ever tell Americans to give up your right so that the government has the ability to spy on you. The question you should be asking is, why is it then so hard for them? And why would the President of the United States demand a clean reauthorization of FISA 702 without warrant requirements. Even more striking, just hours before the shots were fired, a Trump ally named Carolyn Lev was on camera hyping up the evening, saying,
Rumble, is he not?
He is ready to rumble. I will tell you, this speech tonight will be classic Donald J. Trump. It'll be funny. It'll be entertaining. There will be some shots fired tonight in the room. So everyone should tune in. It's going to be really great. I'm looking forward to.
Wow. That comment was made hours before any shots occurred. Naturally, in today's highly charged political atmosphere, it quickly sparked online discussion and speculation. Of course, a single offhand remark proves nothing. I'm sure Carolyn Lev was simply trying to hype the evening. Still, in today's climate, such coincidences often lead to more questions. Look, I don't want to go there. I really don't. I'm sure Carolyn Lev was just joking or trying to be clever, but you have to admit that clip hasn't aged well at all. It certainly added to the online discussion. Let's be honest and compare the two incidents side by side. Both events generated powerful public imagery that quickly became politically significant, reinforcing how modern media environments can transform crisis into narrative. Both prompted widespread public discussion about security, communication, and how political events are understood in real time. Both occurred in high-profile settings where such lapses seem almost impossible. And in both cases, the story quickly shifted from tragedy to political opportunity, focusing on Trump's bravery, his need for more security, and his favorite projects, while the everyday plague of political violence that kills ordinary Americans barely gets mentioned. I'm not here to tell you these events were staged. What I am saying is far simpler and far more important. When a leader spends 10 years training millions of people to distrust official stories, to question everything the government says, and to believe only what feels right, you cannot act shocked when that same powerful instinct turns back on the dramatic moments that benefit him the most. This kind of widespread distrust, once deeply rooted, tends to spread beyond anyone's control. This is the fascinating and frankly somewhat tragic part of the story. Trump didn't just benefit from conspiracy thinking. He built his entire political brand on it. For a decade, he told his followers that nothing is as it seems, that the system is always rigged, that the media lies, and that only he tells the real truth. It was a devastatingly effective weapon when he was the outsider fighting the establishment. But now he sits in the Oval Office, and the monster he created doesn't simply switch off because he's the one in power. When people don't get clear, straightforward answers, whether it's full medical records from Butler or detailed security reports from last night, they do exactly what Trump taught them for years. They fill in the blanks with suspicion. The same way he once questioned Obama's birth certificate for 5.5 years or claimed the 2020 election was stolen. That's why we're now watching Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and many longtime loyal supporters openly questioning the very moments they once treated as almost sacred. It reflects a broader political irony. The man who spent years weaponizing distrust is now watching that same weapon being turned directly against him. And here's what should concern every thoughtful American, regardless of party. Once you teach millions of people that feelings and narratives matter more than verifiable facts, you eventually lose control of where that thinking goes. It doesn't stay loyal forever. It evolves, it grows suspicious, and sooner or later it turns on its own creator. This isn't really about whether either assassination attempt was staged. That's not the core point. The deeper truth is that Trump's own long-term strategy has made it almost inevitable that large portions of his base would eventually question even the most dramatic emotional moments of his life. He helped shape a political culture of distrust that now operates beyond any single individual's control. So here we are, 2 assassination attempts, 2 moments that could have been unifying national tragedies. Instead, they've become fuel for the very conspiracy culture Donald Trump helped create and nurture. The broader culture of distrust has become increasingly self-sustaining, and it's looking at its maker with the same suspicious eyes he once encouraged it to use on everyone else. You don't have to believe any wild theory. And let me be very clear, this video is not promoting conspiracy theories. I'm not claiming either incident was staged. What I'm doing is simply observing a very real phenomenon that millions of Americans, including many longtime Trump supporters, are talking about right now. As citizens who still care about truth, we should ask ourselves some honest, uncomfortable questions. Why do highly emotional political events so often generate both powerful symbolism and intense public demand for transparency? Why has real transparency been so difficult to get? And what eventually happens to any movement that is built so heavily on distrust when that distrust has no limits? I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'm here to point out what is clearly happening in plain sight. The man who taught millions of Americans to question everything is now being questioned by his own most devoted followers. If this video gave you something to think about tonight, I'd appreciate it if you drop your honest thoughts in the comments, especially those of you who've been around a long time and have watched this shift in your own families or circles. I read every comment. Be respectful, be sincere, and if you think someone else might benefit from this conversation, share it with them. Thanks for watching all the way through. Stay curious, stay honest with yourself, and I'll see you in the next one.